Game started.
Okay, MD Chess 37 from Puerto Rico. Cool. Okay, MD Chess. So let's play Knight of 6. I think I'll go back to playing a Nimzo Indian, if allowed. I've been playing the Grunfeld lately. Okay, this is the anti-Nimzo. So I play the Queen's Indian. You can also go with d5 there and just go into a Queen's Gambit. Both are quite playable, and now this bishop a6 move is trendy. Actually, was trendy. I don't know. It's probably no longer trendy. Used to be everybody went to bishop b7, and then they started playing this bishop to a6 move to poke at this pawn here for a little bit, and then the bishop ends up going back to b7 anyway. Kind of a funny sequence. So I can, while the bishop is there on a6, I can pile up on the c pawn. I don't really know any opening theory beyond that. Those first four moves. So after e3, e3 is not the normal response. Normally they do something else. But I forget what. Yeah, defending it with the queen. Yeah, I think that was one of the ideas. So now I could take, and that would get rid of my light squared bishop, which is sometimes a problem piece. But I could also take, and then retreat my bishop back to b7. But that develops his bishop for free. Let's try exchanging the light squared bishop, sticking with the dark squared bishop, and I'm not getting in the move bishop to b4 there because his queen's guarding that square, but maybe I can make a target out of his queen somehow. So if I go to d6, which is where I kind of want to go, he's going to play e4 and threaten e5, which is not so great. So I'm just going to go to e7. Castle, and then see if I can find a way with my knight to... there's a weakness. I should have thought about this. He doesn't have a light squared bishop, but he does have a queen. There's a weakness on this diagonal here. I should be a bit concerned about. He can't get to it immediately because I'm controlling it with knights. Okay. And maybe he's going to castle queenside. That might be interesting. Put pressure on the c pawn. Oh, just rook there directly. So pawn. Pawn to c5 here. He takes, I take with the bishop. Should be okay. Knight moves. If I do nothing, or a knight move, for example, he can move his knight with tempo with an attack on c7. All those guys will be lined up on c7, but I can still play. You can't really stop me from playing c5. So why don't I go ahead and develop a piece before playing that move, c5. He can stop me from playing c5. He can put his queen. He can put his queen right on c6, and that would stop me. That's I totally forgot about that. Yeah, so this move I was not so worried about because I was just planning to play c5 here. Queen c6 would have been interesting, though. I might have had to just play my knight back. Okay, let's see. He can hop in with his knight, yeah, increase some pressure here. So I can't really play rook c8 here because that pins the pawn. His queen and his rook can just exchange out. I can take the pawn and see how he takes back. I can kick the knight and see where it's going. Does he have a great move with his knight? He has a move, does have the move knight c6. So say I play a6, he goes knight c6, hitting my queen. And where does the queen go? The queen goes to e8, I guess. And then his other knight can hop into c7. Or if the queen goes here, he takes the bishop. So I can't allow knight c6, it looks like, or I can't casually play a6 there and kick the knight. Now here I was thinking I have knight knight to d5, and there's no longer any pressure on the c pawn, but he has chased one of my defenders away from the king side, You might be thinking of a kingside attack at some point. Now I can chase the knight away. A6, the knight, I want to chase it before. The knight might have a good home on D6 at some point. I want to chase it away before that becomes a real threat. Knight D6, I'm just going to take it with the bishop and win a pawn, I think. There is, the potential for a pin on this file, but he doesn't have a rook here yet, so this just wins a pawn, doesn't it? Yeah, he sets up the pin. So I need to unpin immediately. Well, I think it will help to unpin quickly. Let me put it that way. I guess, I guess I'll go here so I can go over to the king side with the queen. I was thinking briefly about queen c7 to stay on this nice diagonal, but he can then play something like b4, taking advantage of the pin on my c-pawn. So I don't want to allow any pins on that c-pawn. So it looks like I've got a pawn, and his bishop isn't so great, but he can play e4 there. Yeah, that opens up a diagonal for his bishop. It becomes a better piece now. My knight, where does my knight want to go? Back to f6. He can push again, and I'll just go back where I came from. This is a good square for the knight, so I don't mind that. I do have to be careful these pawns don't become too loose, but now I can kick the queen because with the bishop interfering with the rook and queen communication here, I play here kicking the queen. Well, he can take the knight. I take the bishop, and then he takes the pawn. Interesting. So, what then? Let's think about this. b5, bishop takes knight, pawn takes queen, bishop takes queen. Yeah, he's a piece up even in that line. So, rook here. I didn't want to move the other rook because I didn't want to leave the a6 pawn hanging. So it seems a little bit shaky to me right now. Maybe he can trade right away. He's going to try and double. So I can still play... I can play b5 now, hitting his queen, because bishop takes, I just take the bishop and his queen still has to move. And I do want to chase the queen away from that square. And the queen does not have very many squares. I think b3 is the only square. And then pawn to c4 forks the queen and the rook. So I think I'm winning some material here. Not just about kicking the queen around, it's about winning material. He's got to do something drastic. He could throw in bishop takes knight because it hits the queen, but it does not help. His queen is still short of squares, right? This is no good. No, it did help. It helps because now his queen can retreat straight back. So that saved him from the fork. Good. A good piece of calculation. Good awareness of how to get out of a tactical situation, tactical trickery. So now queen to, yeah, that's probably okay. I was thinking, he may be trying to set up a tactic on the back rank. I have a weak back rank here. So queen takes, rook here check, but I can take with the other rook. There's not enough. He doesn't have enough force lined up to force a checkmate there. Okay, so let's see here. Just trade queens. Probably I should just trade queens. I'm a pawn up, and my pawn structure is decent. Actually, both sides have a good pawn structure, so that's not an advantage to one side or the other. But with pawns on both sides of the board, a pawn up rook endgame should be okay for me. But, okay, we have a potential issue here. If I play c4 and he plays b3, I can't take on b3. He's going to take. He's threatening this now. Yeah, so maybe I was overly optimistic there. I'm going to play this, and then if he plays b3, I'm going to go for the open file here. Rook here. Because I think it's more important to get my rooks active. Pawn takes, pawn takes. Maybe I'll do it this way. Rook here. Rook to a7. And if pawn takes, I'll bring the rook over to the c file. And he can't actually take on b4, but he can do that. Okay, so let's create a little space for my king. And let's just come over here. Now I would like to go to e3 and rather d6. Go to d6 and win the pawn. But he's just going to check me, and I'll have to go back. So I'm going to leave this blockade here and bring my rook over this way. Activate one of my rooks here. Keeping his king out. So rook here, putting pressure on the e-pawn. Now I can play king to d6. I can play that. And I'm not threatening to win the pawn yet, but maybe eventually. Okay, so this is, let's see, I guess it's not going to ever be a Zugzwang position because he can always move his rook up and down. Now see if he wants to take on e5. I'm not sure if that's any good for him. Maybe it is. I can always move my king back and forth, so I'm not going to run out of moves either. But I can't move this rook. This rook is really frozen in place. So we went for that exchange. That's interesting. Yeah, I was thinking I'd take with the rook and that defends the pawn, but of course he's going to take. And he's going to take, and I take back, and then he takes the pawn with check. And then I have to move my king out of the way, and then he's going to grab this pawn over here. Let's see, but what can I do? What can I do besides... let's see, I could defend. If I defend the pawn and he pushes, I take, he takes there. Let's try this. This may allow me to get my king to c7, which would be a good defensive position for my king. And if he pushes the pawn to c7, I can take with the rook. He takes, I take. And then he can grab the pawn on a6, hitting the pawn on f6. but I have time to defend with a move like rook to d6. Yeah, so it looks like a drawish endgame. So I was over optimistic. I didn't get to keep my extra pawn. I traded down into a drawn endgame. Something you should never do. You should always know what endgame you're trading down into. And well, he's pressing here. He might even come up with a win if he plays this well and I keep screwing up. So we'll see. Well, he's taking his time to think about this. Let's look at his time usage. Yeah, let's spend a minute on this move. I hope he is still connected. I'm still connected. Okay, he is. Okay, so yeah, I thought that might be the way to play it. Oh, he can take here with check first. Or he can take here.
Check.
And then he takes here with check. Yeah, so he wins the pawn anyway. I have messed this one up.
Check.
So now I have a worry about. I have to worry about the e pawn, which is isolated, and when he takes it, my rook is going to be hanging. And there's also the check here, picking up my my h pawn. It is a disaster. So what I'm going to do is go after his a pawn. I desperately need counterplay here. He can take my e pawn, or he can check and take my h pawn. Either one is good here, probably. But I guess I would take the e pawn. I think that's closest, yeah. So I'm going to let that run for a move or two and try and stop it with my king when it gets down to the 7th rank there. And in the meantime, I'm going to try and round up the a pawn and push my b pawn forward with counterplay. It's not, in the end game, it's not so much how many pawns you have as the quality of them. But his e pawn is very far advanced, so that was why this was a good move. It's equally as far advanced as my b pawn. Oh, he defends. Okay, well, if he defends, then I can come over here and stop this guy. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's got 2 extra pawns.
Check.
Okay, so I got his a pawn, but he's grabbing my b pawn. There was no way around that one. And he should win with these
Check.
advanced. He should win with these advanced pawns. Yeah, and he's picking up this pawn too if he wants it. He needs to grab my b pawn, though. I don't believe he can really afford to take that. He disagrees. Let's see. So I advance. He brings his king forward. If I go here to cut his king off, he can just bring his king right back. So I need to push right away. If he moves the king, I can start gobbling up these pawns. We may get into a drawn situation if he doesn't move the king. He's taking big chances. Okay, but I guess I have nothing better here than let's deliver a check.
Check.
His rook is now tied down to my b pawn until it takes it. can start gobbling up these pawns now. So this is a theoretical draw, I think. There's 2 pawns against 1 all on one side of the board. So I think he had a way to win that game, and he somehow misplayed it. We'll take a look at that in the postmortem. Should be an interesting king and pawn endgame. So I'm just going to see if I can hold a draw here. This should be a draw.
Check.
Should be a draw. You put your king in front of the pawns. You want to trade this pawn off for one of these guys and then get one of those standard drawn positions. I can keep his king cut off even, which is always good if I can do that. He's never going to be able to make progress without the help of his king, I think. Yeah, he can push those pawns forward. Aha, I don't want to trade. That's a good trick. Threaten to trade. And that will allow him to bring his king over. So I will go here. Try and keep his king out from the side. You just want to try and keep the king away as long as possible.
Check. Check.
That's interesting. He left himself in a position where he can't defend his pawns.
Check.
So I go here. He can push the pawn forward with check. I go to h5, and he delivers a check here. I go to g5. I don't really like that. Let's just drop back and see what he does. Still can't defend these pawns. You have to be careful about walking your king into a tight space in these endgames. Yeah, there's not a lot of room over here, unless you're trying to create a stalemate. But this might have been more of a self-checkmate than a stalemate. Although my king could have escaped through g4, it looks like. But then I'm blocking my rook, and I relieved the pressure on his pawns. So I think the way he played it, this is certainly a draw. How can he stop me from taking one of those pawns? He needs to make mating threats or something. I don't see anything but checks here. But we'll see if he can figure something out. He's done pretty well. I mean, he can... okay, he's just going for the... this is pretty straightforward, I think. Because now it's... with only a rook pawn, I can trade rooks here and draw with just the king against the rook pawn. If he pushes and tries to get a b pawn going, well, we'll see. That might be interesting. That might allow me some chances. Okay, he's thinking. Well, he can either take or push. I don't see anything else. And if he pushes, I'm just going to start checking his king here. I'm not going to try and push my pawn because there's too much danger that I might get mated here. Yeah, he did that. Okay.
Check.
If he goes forward, I'm going to move my king up and get off the back rank, which will be a big improvement, I think. Let's see.
Check. Check.
Yeah, I'm not going to move my king forward. It looked like, yeah, it didn't really help him. This is the third rank defense, right? So I just sit here. Oh, no. This is not the third rank defense. I need to... oh, yeah, it is. He hasn't pushed. I have to wait till he pushes the pawn to the third rank, and then I drop my rook back to the first rank and check from behind. So this is the third rank defense. The classic draw, the Philidor position. I've messed this up before and lost these games. If you let the king get ahead of the pawn, and you're not in a position to check it away like I was here, then it could be big trouble. But if you can force him to push the pawn forward, or hold him off until the pawn comes forward, and then check from behind, this is a draw. He's really eating up time. You know, if he lets his clock run down, I will actually win the game on time, which would be a shame because he really played a good game and deserves at least the draw. He gave the game away, but so I can't say he deserves the win, but he certainly deserves a draw here.
Check.
There's just no place for the king to hide. That's the point of the third rank defense. Once the pawn has been pushed forward, the king has no hiding squares. It can't escape the checks. If he goes in front of the rook, then I can step forward. So it's just going to repeat.
Check. Check.
Yeah, he's moving fast enough now. He let his clock run down to almost 0. So that should be a draw, right?
Game drawn.
Okay, well, good game. I will upload this and do a post-mortem. See you guys later. Bye.